Hey there, Heather, ho there. It's Jeff Cutter Diamond. Welcome you to another Degrassi video. And remember when I did the top 25 good guys? Well, as the characters, well, I needed to do the flip side. And thanks to a Reddit post I did, I got 40 people that were given one spot. Hang on one second. So basically, when I did it, you talked about 40 people. And out of the 40 people, only 11 people were mentioned once in that post. So that cut it down to 29. But I wanted to do 25. So I decided that for people who have been mentioned twice, there were 10 people. So I put them in two groups of five. Well, I had 19 characters, and I named Blue Chessex my number 19 guy. I know it's ironic wearing number 19 and all that, but this is for a different reason. This is for the Blue Jays. And with this video being taped on October 1st, 2021, it's Blue Jays pennant chase time. Obviously, I'm from the Ontario, so I got to be a Blue Jay fan. So anyway, so there were 19 people who were mentioned at least 3 times, and they easily got to the top 25. So what I did was I had two groups of 5. I split them into guys, and I split them. Second group is to girls/administration. So the top 3 in those two polls got into the top 25. So originally, it was going to be Shantae, Raditz, Shep, Jack, and Darcy, and all that. There were going to be some, well, the two groups were on the west side for boys, Sig, Craig, Jay, Miles, and Hunter. And on the other side, Shantae, Raditz, Shep, Jack Jones, being, Imogen's girlfriend, and Darcy. But there was one problem. I went over in my head and I'm thinking, wait a minute, there should be something. So this is just basically the intro. What happened is that when I did the top 25 characters, I had no staff members. So basically, I couldn't put Raditz and Perino in, or even Shep. So logically, Raditz and Shep would have to be replaced. Shep got in, Raditz didn't. Raditz actually got outside the top 3 and would not be in the top 25 horse. So I had to think quick. And then I also realized that Blue, alongside Jack the Girl, well, Jack Jones, was only in one season. I forgot to say that. Well, and I looked at a lot of the characters; they were around for more than one season. Now, a lot of people will say, "What about Luke Baker?" But no, Luke was introduced in season 12, and then season 13 he was a character, so that he was in for 2 seasons. So I basically said multiple seasons and all that because, you don't want a one season wonder being in the top 25 and not deserve it. So Blue got disqualified, and so did Jack. They got disqualified too. So what it came down to is that Shantae, Sig, Craig, Jay, Miles, and Hunter were in. So the 5 people. And then I thought about myself. It's like, does Darcy deserve to be low? And I'm like, no. And with, the 3 main protagonists, with Maya being disqualified from the bottom 25 due to the fact that she got to the top 25 and the top 5, and with Claire on the list, I figured, well, there's a lot of Emma hate. So I decided to swap Emma for Darcy and all that. So, yeah. Now, of course, there were a couple of people who were going to be honorable mentions, but because of everything going around, they're in. So let me give you the top 25. All right, so number 25 is Craig. Craig wasn't originally supposed to be in because he lost out on that voting, but because of the few changes, Craig got in. So why is Craig one of the worst? Well, his behavior, okay, he had bipolar conditions, but basically when he was off his meds or off his game, it was disastrous. I mean, yeah, Craig seemed to not really think of Joey as a father figure, even though that Joey saved Craig from being abused by his dad, by Albert Manning. Craig hallucinated about Albert at a luau dance and tore down school decorations, but thankfully, though, it was just that. But Craig, serially cheated on both Manny and Ashley with each other. They both break off with him. He gets Manny pregnant. He wants to have the kid because, Craig wants to be a good dad. And he also has little family resemblance left. I mean, his parents are both dead. He wants to prove it to Manny. Craig and Manny become a decent couple. But Craig basically, once we see with Ashley in season 4, voices Carrie, he blows up. And basically, we see how bad Craig could be. Craig had a few episodes that he had to go through drug rehab, and Simpson even took him to Calgary to be with Joey, because that's where Joey ended up. And Craig cleaned himself up, and he was good, so that's why he's low on this list. Number 24 is Miles. He was supposed to be there. Yeah, Miles wasn't mentioned too much, so he basically missed out on the top 18. So anyway, Miles, why is he the worst? Well, he just seemed to have the air of solidarity as a Hollingsworth. I mean, I know that for some strange reason, Frankie's not even on this list, but Frankie didn't really get mentioned much in the post. So basically, I couldn't get Frankie off. I couldn't put Frankie on the thing. So Frankie aside, Miles did burn his dad's campaign poster. It did accidentally set a fire within Degrassi that ruined a cheerleading competition. Of course, the Degrassi Nudes thing also ruined it, but Miles had issues. Maya was trying to help Miles get through it. Miles seemed to be terrible and all that. He almost went to private school, but for some very strange reason, he was back in Degrassi and all that. I think his dad probably put him in. I don't know, nepotism much. But yeah, Miles can't be hated that much. I mean, he was a decent guy, and his relationship with Tristan seemed a little toxic. But Miles seemed to be okay. Number 23 is Shantae. Now, Shantae lasted a long time. She started in season 4 in the episode that Emma decided to have a girls' night to deal, to that Emma finally got out of her funk and all that. She still had the gonorrhea thing, but she was happy. She was doing a prank war with Chester, who was going to be a good character, but Chester got blackholed. But anyway, Shantae was around from season 4 to like season 12, and it was like, wow. I think a lot of people think Shantae was the worst because Shantae basically was still around for a long time and failed a couple times. Was in too many seasons, too long, and people were faulted. One of Shantae's biggest moments was in season 10 when Simpson basically canceled extracurriculars and basically punished the school for a few mistakes. Although it wasn't completely Simpson's fault, the school board put him up to it. So basically, Simpson gets post-it notes put on his car. He spits out his coffee and he's like, shocked. Simpson does make a plea with Shantae that everything's gone now, but if you behave little by little, I might reinstate things. And the school takes him at his word. Shantae should be thankful for that. Number 22 is Emma. Like I said, Emma wasn't even in those polls to determine who would be in the top 25 list after number 18. So after 19 with Blue, but of course with Blue being disqualified because he's a one-season wonder. All that. So I figured Emma needed to get in because, I mean, a lot of people hated on Emma. A lot of my lists and all that, Emma doesn't really get much favored. She didn't really get favored in the question I asked, who's the better one of the 4 horsewomen, Holly J, Emma, Claire, or Maya. And a lot of people put Holly J, maybe because Holly J was good, or my personal unpopular opinion is that Cutters, Degrassi, unpopular opinions. I'm not doing an episode of this, but basically, I figured that none of them suited them, so they voted for the 4th option, which was Holly J. But I mean, yeah, like Emma got shot on. But Emma did have her bad moments. Like, it wasn't, like, after season 4, her bad moments were in a different interpretation, if you will. So Emma was kind of a cause girl and a pain in the neck. Like, she started a rumor about Liberty's problems with Armstrong, but Libby had dyscalculia. She tried to get Manny thrown off the cheerleading team because she thinks cheerleading is sexist, which is fine. Like, I understand Emma's POV. And then, season 2, she was upset that her mom was dating her teacher. Who wouldn't be? I mean, she did push herself into the whole abortion thing because Spike was going to abort baby Jack. And she was pushy towards Manny and all that. And Sean to a degree. And maybe Chris That's maybe why Emma and Chris broke up before season 4. Emma, unfortunately, was so gung ho on just forcing Liberty not to be with Chris. She didn't want to be with Chris. She just wanted Liberty not to be with Chris because she figured that it was bad on her taste. Who cares? Unfortunately, that problem did get Emma persona non grata with Liberty and Manny. She didn't really have friends. She tries to get into Paige's clique, and she was bad because I think in her mind, she wanted to be in Paige's clique more than anything else and didn't really care about the cause. But when the cause was taking too much about the Orange Ribbon campaign, she decided to stop it. She got no friends. She's basically at the mercy of Rick. Emma did the right thing protecting Rick, in a sense, but the school just basically turned on her. And I think that a lot of people probably would not have cared if Emma had died. I know, Snake and a few major characters, but the minor characters would not have cared if Emma died. But from Rick's shotgun. And of course, Emma goes through her zombie Emma phase, and somehow gonorrhea gets her out of it. She finally snaps out of her problems. By season 5, her issues, quote unquote, were trying to find a boy because possibly the Rick Murray situation, another, as I put in a Cutter Degrassi unpopular opinion, was that she wanted to hang around, she wanted to have friends, and she wanted to have a boyfriend because she wanted to be normal, and also the Rick Murray situation. She didn't have a boyfriend, she didn't really have any friends, and she felt that if she had both, then she probably would have been out of the situation and maybe things would have been different. But no, Emma got a little too clingy. Emma seemed to be terrible, especially with dating Peter, even though that Peter hurt Manny and put Manny in Emma's house. Why would you do that, Emma? Just because you needed love and all that? Like Peter and all that? I know for damn sure that the Emma from seasons 1 to 3.5, precocious as she is, she would never have been with Peter. So logically, Emma has to be one of the worst. Being with Peter, and of course the whole thing with Manny and in the wake of JT stabbing. And I get it with Emma that if Manny had basically listened to Emma's cries for help, I think Emma would have calmed down and Emma probably would not have been such a dick. But unfortunately, Manny didn't want to listen. Emma basically wanted to push her agenda forward. She got in trouble. She did tell Manny she's sorry and all that. And then, she dates Kelly and, she decides to chase friends instead of grades, which is not good on her character. Anyway, number 21 is Hunter. Hunter, in a sense, seems like a good character, but there's a couple of things why he's the worst. Number 1 was season 15, or Next Class season 1, if you want to know. With the Gamers Club. Okay, started out innocently enough with the Gamers Club, but then unfortunately the game was to shoot female zombies and, it looked terrible, and the Feminist Club got bitchy and forced Hunter's Gamers Club out of it. Hunter was pissed off with Maya, even though Goldie was the leader of the feminists, but Goldie basically used Maya as a mouthpiece because Goldie figured that people will listen to Maya if she's a feminist and not that. So Goldie put Maya in the crossfires of Hunter, who wanted to take a gun and take Maya out. Kind of like what Rick would do to Emma in season 4. Thankfully, though, Hunter gets stopped by Miles, and Simpson steps in and basically blasts Hunter and basically tells Hunter that bringing a gun to school is not good because of the Rick Murray situation. Hunter is put in rehab for a couple of weeks and is allowed to come back to the school, mostly from his dad's assistance. And, Snake didn't want to cross Mayor Hollingsworth. So, anyhow, Hunter was bad. Now, the second one's up for debate, but this is about Yale in the final season 4 of Next Class / season 18. Yale was translated into non-binary and using him or her as pronouns and all that. And Hunter just wanted Yale to answer. Do you feel better as a boy or a girl? Yale didn't give an answer, and Hunter was pissed off. And of course, Hunter got laughed at. Hunter basically dumps Yale because he likes girls, and Yale didn't give him a straight answer. Homophobic and being a Hollingsworth doesn't help his case, but you never know. It's up for interpretation. Number 20 is Jay. And I'm shocked that Jay did not get this far. Jay only got 3 mentions 2 mentions, pardon, on the worst characters list. And there were several characters I think who would have been below Jay if I didn't listen to the Reddit community. But the rules are rules. Everyone who had 3 mentions got to be in the video, got to be in the top 18, and subject to later polls. But the worst part about this is that, I always hated Jay with a passion. I even tweeted Mike Global on the anniversary of Rick's death, like Halloween, and said that you fucking ruined Rick and all that. I don't think he liked that at all. Thankfully, though, I didn't get in trouble. But anyway, Jay was terrible. I mean, especially with the whole Rick Murray situation. No empathy. He basically bullied Spinner and Alex not to say his name in public, but basically Spinner needed to confess, and Spinner did tell on Jay, and Jay got what he deserved, an expulsion. All that. But people forget that Jay came in season 3 and kind of broke off the Emma Sean thing. Emma was stressed. She had to deal with Snake having leukemia, baby brother, and all that, and Sean didn't think Emma had time for him. So Sean gravitates towards Jay and the Candy Bandits, and Jay, in a sense, took Sean away from Emma and bragged about it. I really didn't like Jay at all. I mean, yes, Jay had that weird angle, that redemption song with Manny, and it kind of did work in a sense, but I still can't get past the fact that Jay didn't have any consequences in season 4. And Spinner was right to blast Jay, and Jay figured he needed to be better. I think Jay only did it because Spinner wasn't around, because Spinner was hanging out with Darcy in the Friendship Club, and Alex didn't want anything to do with him. So he needed to change his tone to get recognized. But for how bad Jay is, I really think that he deserves number 20, because number 19, who just missed out and not really getting mentioned a lot, was Sig. I was actually shocked that Sig didn't get mentioned a lot. But yeah, Sig did not make the top 18, which means he didn't have to go to the other polls. Now, Sig was terrible. I mean, season 12, you knew he was jealous of Maya and Cam. So it was a love triangle, Maya, Cam, and Sig. Sig, I think, put pressure on Maya to make Cam look like a bad guy. Maya did gravitate towards Cam after Cam apologized for his actions. That got him suspended. But Sig saw Cam, who was waiting for Maya with the stuff out hoot, and basically says, if you want to make Maya happy, get out of her life. What an idiot, Sig. Cam kills himself. Sig feels terrible. Maya actually doesn't react to it. She just laughs off at Sig. Well, Maya had her own problems and all that. But for me, I mean, Sig was a little possessive of Maya. It seemed to me that whenever Sig was with Maya, he didn't really care much about her. But when Maya was with someone else, like Miles or Cam or some random guy like Drew, he went off the deep end. He was upset. He wanted Maya to himself. And maybe he pressured Maya to be with him because of his gang life. Who knows? But Sig did calm down a little bit, but he was in a polyamorous relationship with Frankie and Esme. And, he did mellow out a bit, but it seemed like Sig just was possessive of Maya and all that. All right, so that finishes that off. Now time for the second portion of this video, the top 18. So, as I said, every character who got mentioned 3 times in the thread got to be in. And I basically split them up into 3 groups of 6 by eras. The A era is the Emma era from seasons 1 to 7. The B era is from 8 to 14, the Claire era, as I call it, and everything else was from 15 plus, the next class thing. One problem, though, the majority of the top 18 actually were from the B era, or what I call the Claire era. Basically, where Degrassi sucked the most, in a sense. So basically, I had to move a couple of players to A, which is like from 1 to 7, because they were mentioned in seasons 1 to 7. They did have a role before season 8. And I moved some to the next class thing because I need to fill that up. So basically, of those 3 polls, of the top 2 got to be in the final 6. Yeah, I forgot I have to change my hands. So they got to the top 6. If you got 3rd and 4th in your polls, you got to be at the mercy from 7 to 12. If you get in the bottom two, you get from 13 to 18. All right, so here we go. So the results from 18 to 13 were from the C poll. All right, from like the guys who were 5th and 6th. All right, here we go. M. Number 18 with 12 votes was Claire. Now, a lot of people put Claire probably in their personal top 10 for patheticness. All that. Claire was mentioned. How many times was Claire mentioned? She was mentioned 6 times in the list, in the thread. And obviously, I had to put her in. Now, Claire was drama. She had a lot of things wrong with her. The writers threw Aslan Paul. I mean, yeah, I think that's how you say Aslan Paul. Her stuff. And, she had to deal with a lot. Season 8, she had to deal with the chef being a dick towards Connor because Connor was different. And, with all that Claire was going to be the next Emma with the causes and all that, but that failed miserably. Season 9, she lost Casey to Jenna, and that's upset. I'm actually shocked Casey was not part of the top 18. Didn't really get mentioned much. But anyhow, she had cancer. She had been groped by her boss. She had 2 people go after Eli because to get Claire, like Fitz and Owen. Spoiler alert, Owen is in this list. And basically, she had her parents divorced. She contemplated doing a wheat cult. She contemplated living with Eli because she didn't want her parents to separate because it was against God's will. And then, she had the drama of being pregnant and then losing the baby on a miscarriage and Pill basically saying something about cameras and Claire went off the deep end. I just wish Claire had a better ending. That's all I gotta say. Number 17 on the list with 13 votes in the C poll was Riley. Now, I think people say he was the worst because of how his story portrays. Like, we've seen the homosexual coming out of the closet issues before with Marco in season 3. So they were trying to recreate that magic with Riley in season 10. That, Riley was a star athlete. He falls in love with the kicker being Sane. And, he likes Sane. But Riley also has to deal with prejudice from his family. And, the pressures of being gay. Especially with Drew almost outing him in season 10. But Drew only wanted the quarterback spot. He didn't want Riley hurt. And, of course, when Riley retaliated with hazing and all that got Karen Torres, to yell at Simpson. And that's why Simpson had to bow down to Audra in season 10. So, yeah, Riley seemed okay. Like, he came out and his parents didn't really approve of him, but he said that I don't need your approval and all that. I think his mom came around in the end. But anyhow, Riley was okay, but he seemed to be a stereotypical angry homosexual from what I've been reading and all that. But, I just wish he had a happy ending. Anyway, number 16 with 15 votes in the C poll was Katie Matlin. Now, Katie had her goals. She wanted to be a part of the Canadian women's soccer team, and maybe a spirit of Katie Matlin was part of the Canadian team that won the gold medal in Tokyo at the Olympics this year. But, of course, no, she ripped her knee. She had to take her mom's medication, and she was addicted to painkillers. She had to go through therapy. She had to go through a lot of issues. She did piss off a lot of people within the school and all that. I don't know much about Katie, in a sense, because that was the era which I basically didn't watch Degrassi at all. So Katie seemed to be a little permissive and a little angry at things. I think she took out, who was it? Fiona with her eating disorder? Someone's eating disorder, and Katie was just being a dick. Anyway, number 15 on the list is 23 votes in the C is Drew. Now, why is Drew the worst? Well, Drew had issues. Drew, for the first few seasons he was on the show, basically used his mother to get his own way. Like, his mother would always say he's the perfect child, can't be touched and all that. You hurt Drew, you're going to get it. Basically, she got mad when Riley hazed Drew. She got mad when Allie was with Drew in the boiler room, even though that nobody knows the whole story. Yeah, she basically protected Drew and all that. Not so much Adam, but Drew. it got to the point that Drew could do whatever he wanted, and his mother wouldn't bat an eye. However, when Drew and Bianca get in trouble with the law, well, mostly because Vince came shooting at Drew because Drew wanted to protect everyone, and Vince wanted to kill Drew for protecting his friends, especially after Bianca killed Anson. Drew basically tells his mother that this is all my fault. This is not Bianca's fault. She needs a good lawyer. I will take responsibility for what my brother. Yeah. And, Drew makes Audra back off of Sins. But unfortunately, Drew does get in trouble. He stays with Bianca. Bianca does break up with Drew. Drew dates Zoe for a while, dates Claire, even goes with Becky. And it's like Drew went out with the girlfriend of his dead brother/sister. I mean, what the hell, Drew? I mean, Drew, in a sense, actually redeemed himself in the season 14 finale when he defied Pill's orders to stay away from prom by throwing prom at the dot, mostly because there was a boat problem that Dallas screwed up on. And Audra did tell Drew to do the prom. All that. Drew got in trouble. He wasn't allowed to cross the stage, but Audra was there. Audra saw Drew not be allowed to cross the stage. And that fueled Audra's desire that Pill is not the perfect principal. I mean, I know Pill was only in for the short term until Simpson was investigated and cleared, if you will. But, I think Pill forgot that Drew's mom is a decent school board figure and could tell her higher ups that Pill was trouble. Anyway, number 14 with 27 votes in the C poll was Claude. Now, I decided to use Claude as a throwback. Well, Claude was actually mentioned 4 times in the thread, which is unusual because, it's Degrassi Junior High and High doesn't really count. Although, when I did my top 25 character polls, I pulled 6 characters from each of the 3 eras, the Claire, the Emma, and the Maya eras, and then I just said, well, anyone I missed, just comment below, and then I added 7 names. I did it differently. And Claude was basically a star and all that. Now, Claude was a dick because he was a guy that Caitlin Ryan fancied while she was broken up with Joey. Now, Claude and Caitlin share a lot of interests. But unfortunately, Claude left Caitlin high and dry during a animal protest. Caitlin had to be put on probation and community service, and she never talked to Claude. Claude wanted Caitlin to talk to her, but no. He stood her up, and, he tries to put his poem in the talent show. Bronco says, no way. And he tries to get Caitlin's attention, nothing going. Claude had problems. Joanne said that his dad hated him and his mom hated him, so basically he didn't know where he could fit in. So Claude decides one day to take a gun to the school and kill himself in the bathroom, which Snake unfortunately sees and gags and tells Radich, who was VP at the time. And of course, Claude died. And it seemed that Claude did it on purpose to get at Caitlin. And it seemed to work. However, Joey told Caitlin that basically this is what Claude wanted. Claude wanted people to feel bad for him. Don't give him any fodder. And Caitlin said, no, I can't give him fodder. And number 13, who missed out on the B tier, but he had 47 votes in the C tier. The winner of that was Johnny DeMarco. Johnny DeMarco was a troublemaker from season 6 in the Lakehurst situation. He was from Lakehurst. He was there when his friend, or supposed friend, Drake Lampley, stabbed JT in the aorta. Johnny had problems because now with Lakers and Degrassi merged because of a fire, I think he had issues because, he helped his friend stab JT and kill him. Johnny thankfully didn't get, he may have gotten a little bit of trouble from the police, but I think he basically told off Drake Lampley. Obviously, I have to say the last name because the other Drake is Jimmy in a sense. So as is, Johnny had issues. Johnny was actually at that Brad camp that Darcy went to in season 7. And, he had the guilt of what had happened to JT, a beloved person. So Johnny was a bit of a bully with Bruce the Moose. And yes, Bruce the Moose is part of the list. Trust me. You'll be surprised to know where Bruce landed, but yeah. Anyway, Johnny and Bruce were being dicks and all that. Johnny sent nudes of Ali around the school. Idiot. I don't know why. But anyway, Johnny graduated and went to Toronto University and then was shocked when Ali runs away and finds him and wants to stay with him. Johnny says, "You can't run away from your problems because, I was there when my friend stabbed somebody from a rival school who should not have been in a rivalry that should not have existed, if you will." So yeah, he persuades Ali to go back to her family. So at least Johnny had some bit of good news. All right, so the B tier, as I said, were the people who ended up third and fourth on the in the preliminary polls to get into the B poll for 7 to 12. Here are the results. First of all, number 12 was Declan with 12 votes. Declan was a bit of a jerk. I mean, yeah, his twin Fiona also caused trouble because something. But Declan goes after Holly J. Fiona kisses Declan to try to force Declan not to be with Holly J. And basically twincest, if you will. But Declan, the reason why Declan seemed to be the worst was when Holly J's family lost a lot of money. Declan offered to have Holly be his girlfriend and he would pay for her. Basically, Declan would own Holly soul for money. And for a while it worked, but then Holly J stood up to Declan and basically blasted him a new one. I think Declan using his money to get on Holly J. They were perfect for each other, but Holly J lost her financial standing and Declan tried to make his up there. Number 11 with 13 votes in this B poll was Zoe. I'm actually shocked Zoe just missed out on the top 10, but them's the breaks. So anyway, Zoe was kind of a dick. She came off of the reality show. She was a child actor. It seemed that she used her actress connections to get herself out of trouble, especially in season 13 when she accidentally throws a cup of water at Perino and Simpson wants to suspend her, but Zoe's mom basically said that her learning disability ruins her chances of thinking straight. And basically, she gets at Simpson. Also, Zoe slut shames Maya and makes Maya, she cyber slut shames Maya. Maya comes through with a song. Maya gets in trouble. Zoe gets off scot-free, even though that there was a chance that Maya could get Zoe in trouble. But Zoe didn't get in trouble. I figured that Zoe and her mom used the power of influence on Simpson, saying that, we can ruin your career and all that. So Zoe used her celebrity to get away with it, too, which was sucky. But season 13, she got raped by somebody who would be in the top 6 and his friend. And, we sympathize with Zoe being, you know, raped and all that. And Zoe getting justice as the two boys went to juvie for a couple of years because of their age. Zoe and Maya did patch things up in the finale of season 13. But anyway, yeah. But season 14 took the cake. I mean, we thought that Zoe would be a refined character. Nope. Zoe used Degrassi news to her advantage. It's possible she used it to get control of her body back because, she was shamed and all that. Ashamed of being raped. And then maybe she needed people on her side. So she decided to be the mastermind behind Degrassi Nudes and kicked Frankie out for not doing her part and told Frankie she cannot say anything to anybody because she's just implicated. Zoe just bosses the cheerleaders around, and then an anonymous hacker basically ruins Zoe's career, which was Winston. And Zoe does go to the cops and admits her guilt about Degrassi Nudes. Zoe ends up getting lucky. Her lawyer gets her community service in lieu of a 5-year sentence for child pornography and all that. Zoe learns about Pill and her no cell phone and backpack policy. So Zoe tries to sneak cell phones and backpacks to her friends to get everyone on her side. Fails miserably. Pill could have thrown the book and basically said that she's not doing her community service and put Zoe in jail, but she didn't, for some strange reason. What a temperance. Now, Zoe did calm down after that. Her homosexuality storyline was played to the hill that her mother basically refused to have Zoe turn gay. And the fact is, with Zoe not getting roles because of her homosexuality, homophobic people aside, Zoe's mom decided to marry someone else for his money so that she didn't have to work. She was living off Zoe. And you could also add maybe the Catholic faith and all that. But no, I think Zoe was written by like a cash cow by her mother. So he burns a letter from her mother and basically says her family is her friends that she graduated with. Now, numbers 9 and 10 actually were tied. It was the only tie I had. I figured I was going to have one or two ties to deal with. So, anyway, number 10 is Ashley with 21 votes. She actually was tied with ninth place with 21 votes. However, I needed the tiebreaker. The tiebreaker was how many times they were mentioned in the post. And Ashley was only mentioned 5 times to the next person's number 8. So number 10 is Ashley, top 10. Ashley seemed to be the worst because of her moods and basically her personality. Season 1, she was the go-getter. She was one of the key people in the show who would probably have taken the series away from Emma as the main protagonist. She wasn't involved in a few storylines. She had to deal with her new stepbrother, Toby, in one episode while running for student council. Another episode, she found out that her dad was gay and all that. And then the finale of season 1, she took ecstasy to stay with Jimmy and then caused her to bottom out and people laugh at her and basically shun her. Ashley is upset that people are staying away from her. She's an outcast, and Paige uses the power of her gossip group to make sure that Hazel and Terry stay with her. Ashley turns goth, I think, as a way to try to get at Paige and all that. She tries it out with Jimmy. Jimmy just likes Ashley's old look, and she's upset. Ashley whines and complains and basically says, oh, woe is me, and all that. She does, in a sense, help Paige deal with her rape in season 2. Although I figured Ashley was just going to mock Paige because, Paige ruined Ashley, so Ashley was going to get her back. But Ashley showed some gumption and helped her out and helped Paige out. Good for her. Ashley, though, would be cheated on by Craig, who got Manny pregnant. Ashley announces the pregnancy in front of the whole school. Hell of no fury, like a woman scorned, and she was scorned. She sang a song, trying to destroy Craig at the song competition, but Craig comes up with an apology song that somehow wins Ashley over. Why? I don't know. And then Ashley just takes time off school. She just has moods and all that. Paige gets Ashley out of her mood and basically gets her to an Elvis competition. Weird. Season 4, she's still with Craig. She decides to be with Craig and has to deal with damage control that Craig wants to marry Ashley. She leaves for England, leaving Craig pissed off and off his meds. She goes back in season 6, basically to be with Jimmy. Tried to have the Ashley-Jimmy dynamic, but that failed miserably. Ashley was overshadowed by Jimmy, and then, poof, Ashley left. Kind of moody, don't you think? Now, number 9, of course, won the tiebreak over Ashley with 21 votes, and it was Marisol. I don't blame people for making 8 mentions of Marisol in the thing. And of course I counted. I always did. Like, Marisol was terrible. I mean, her character was just being a bitch and all that, if you mind me. I don't know how many good things Marisol had about her. Now remember, I didn't really do research on Marisol. I don't know much about Marisol because obviously this was the Claire era was basically the time I stopped watching Degrassi altogether, in a sense. So all I know from Marisol is that she basically stole Casey from Jenna while Jenna was fucking pregnant and had Tyson. Like, what the fuck? And Casey says, you told me to play basketball. It's like, why would Casey be with Marisol when he's got a pregnant girlfriend? Pathetic. Casey does try to get back with Jenna after Marisol, after being outed, I guess, for his tweets from Marisol. Marisol just seemed terrible. And I thought Marisol was like Latino. She was black. It's kind of a bad stereotype if you ask me. Okay, so number 8 with 23 votes in the B tier was Bruce the Moose. Now, I think he was terrible because he didn't really have a lot of good qualities with him. Bruce the Moose was Johnny's sidekick in a sense from Lakehurst. He didn't really do too much. He was just a space filler. That's all I'm going to say about him. Yeah, I forgot to make the numbers. Like number 9. No, sorry. Yep, that's right. Number 9 is Marisol. Number 8 is Bruce. Number 7, who won the B tier and did not get to the A tier, with 71 votes, is Derek. And this is the biggest shock because Derek had one of the highest numbers of people mentioned. Derek was mentioned 4, 8, 12, 16, 19 times by people. I heard Derek 19 times in the thread. And yet Derek missed out. Now, truth be told, Derek actually missed out by 2 votes. He was almost runner-up in the A tier, and he ended up dropping to the B tier because he didn't get in the top 2. But yeah, Derek was a terrible guy. 71 votes. Wow, that was a huge number. That was more than Bruce, Marisol, and Ashley put together. If you combine that, that's 65, if you must know. So anyway, yeah, Derek was terrible. I mean, Derek was in season 5 as a sympathetic figure and basically Danny's right-hand man because, Danny wanted to be with JT, but JT matured behind Danny. No, I'm surprised Danny didn't get much mention, but yeah. Anyway, Derek was terrible. I mean, Derek did help Liberty deal with the fact that her baby was being adopted and all that because he was adopted too. But what made Derek terrible is his characteristics, especially with the fact that he framed Danny for stuff in season 8, and also in season 8 he bullied Jane to submission on the school football team. Like what a jerk! And he didn't like Jimmy when he came back to coach basketball, to be a coach on the basketball team, thinking that why would a guy in a wheelchair do help me with my basketball career? I can understand Danny. Derek. Excuse me. Yeah, so Derek got a lot of mentions in the thing, and surprisingly, he didn't get in the top 6. It was actually close to the butt end. All right, so those were the B tier. Now it's for the A tier. The people who were the top 2 in the A, B, and C tier, meaning the Emma, the Claire, and the Maya era. Here we go. Number 6, with 20 votes in the final in the A tier poll, 20 votes was Owen Milligan. Now, Owen for me doesn't really fit. I feel like I don't know Owen that much because that was in the part of the seasons that I didn't really watch the show. So I don't know much about Owen. All I know about Owen is that he was homophobic, despite the fact that his younger brother was gay. And yes, he's coming up on the list shortly. But yeah, Owen was homophobic. He hung around Fitz. He was fixing to destroy Eli for Claire's sake. And, Owen got a lot of trouble. Like, yeah, Anya dated him probably because she needed to date somebody because Sam fucked her over too many times. But yeah, Owen to me just didn't really seem like a good character. He seemed more like a bully. I think he tried to calm down, but it didn't really work that much. All right, so that was 6. Here's 5. And that was Esme, who got 28 votes in the A tier. Well, Owen came from the B tier. Was it B tier or no? Yeah, Owen was one of the top 2 in the B tier. Esme, well, in the B group. Sorry, B group is the Claire era. Esme comes from the Maya era. So Esme was introduced, first season of Next Class, season 15? But Esme seemed to be a little manipulative. She got Miles in trouble for snipping her hair, even though that she snipped her own hair and tossed the scissors at Miles and got Miles in trouble. She was basically just manipulative and all that, and people hated her for that. But Esme did have a dark side because her mother actually committed suicide in front of her when Esme was 10. A fact that Esme tells Sig in season 17 season 17, Next Class season 3, if you will, trying to save Maya from dying from her pill problem. So, or suicide attempt, if you will. So yeah, so Esme had a dark side. But Esme was still manipulative to the point that she basically tried to force people to stay away from Maya. Esme thought that she was going to get a lot of praise and a lot of heroism after saving Maya from a suicide attempt. But everyone gravitated towards Maya and was trying to help Maya out. Esme got pissed. Esme tried to destroy Maya's character. And Esme decided to enter a polyamorous relationship with Sig and Frankie as a way to keep with Sig because they were both manipulative as fuck, and Frankie too. Unfortunately for Esme, Sig gravitated towards Maya, although it was Maya did say something about the problem, but Maya didn't mean it. It was just accident. And Maya was trying to get Sig to stay with Esme, but Esme destroys Sig and throws him off a cliff, off a hill in the prom episode of season 4, aka Next Class season 4, including season 18. Of course, Esme has her own problems. I don't know what the heck's going on. Yale tells everyone that Esme didn't attend classes last month and didn't do her exams, which is an automatic failure. So Esme would have to come back another year. Esme shows up at graduation out of the blue with a motorcycle, knowing that not Yale. That Sig likes motorcycles. Sig says that you need help. Esme decides to knock him flat with the motorcycle helmet. Miss Grell, the guidance counselor, comes in and says Esme is not too late to make a mistake, and Esme falls into depression and cries in Grell's arms. Hopefully she got the help, but next class is gone. It's like, whatever happened to Esme? That was one of the biggest open-ended things that never ended. Number 4 is, speaking of Owen Milligan, his younger brother Tristan is in this, and 39 people voted for him as the worst. Well, he's kind of considered the worst in the Maya era. Now, I know he started out in season 10 or 11 in the Claire era, but he was prominently featured in the Next Class era, so that's why I put him there. Now, Tristan, when you see him in season 18 compared to season 11, you see him. He's skinny, he's got good looks and all that. But no, he wasn't always like that. Season 11, he was chubby, he was wearing hats, he was blonde for a time being. And Tristan fasted to be with a guy, and, he collapsed. But he still kept the weight off for some reason. So, yeah, Tristan was terrible, especially to Maya. I mean, Tristan wanted love in the right places and wanted to be with a guy like Miles and all that. He was a little biphobic because he didn't like Miles being with Lola or being around girls at all, including Zoe and Maya. So Maya is upset that Tristan is falling for Mr. Yates, and Mr. Yates is kind of groping him. So Maya stops Mr. Yates. Tristan is pissed off, saying that Maya's just jealous because Tristan is gravitating towards Miles, and tells Maya that you have guys all over you. Why do you want to destroy this relationship? Maya says, it's the right thing to do. And Tristan just blows her off. And then Tristan forces Maya to apologize to him in season 14 to be friends. What a dick. He did a lot of dickish moves. Now, one of his moves that could be, was Tristan a dick or was he being forced to be a dick? Was it in Throwback Thursday season 16? Or Next Class season 2, if you will. When he's presiding, he's student council president, and he presides over the Throwback Thursday stuff, like the retro thing that Snake is throwing it. He's trying to impress Holly J with his status as school president, student body president, and he seems to not want a lot of conflict. He gets mad at Mo for his jokes. He gets mad at Manny for trying to sing a song about abortion. Manny's just mentioned off screen. And Mo calls him out on it in the showcase. He says that basically Tristan doesn't like it. Tristan just thinks it's terrible. Tristan realizes he's terrible, and he needs to calm down the students who are protesting against the fact that Simpson's not willing to help them with the Black Lives Matter issues. So Tristan does agree that they need to talk about their issues and all that. About, Tiny being in trouble, minority people being hated more than whites, if you will, and Simpson just being a dick and trying to get Frankie kicked to the curb. Frankie does run away, but she comes back and apologizes for everything. So, so Tristan was kind of a dick. He was student council president when they had that bus crash, and then he was in a coma. And people said that was the best thing about Tristan was when he was in a coma. And a lot of people also say that Tristan unequivocally was a dick to Maya, because when Maya was recovering in the hospital at the end of season 3 of Next Class, aka season 17, Tristan said something about going to get pizza, like stealing Maya's thunder. Was that on purpose or was that not? In a sense, it may have been on purpose, but to me, he had coma brain. I mean, people with coma brain just don't think correctly. I think Tristan had coma brain. Sorry to say that, but I think he did. So Tristan probably didn't realize what he did, and he probably feels terrible about it. But, que sera, sera. So, and Tristan, Tristan was okay and all that in the finale, season 18, but, he was terrible. Okay, so next on the list, at number 3, with 62 votes, is Peter. And no, Peter was not the worst coming out of the Emma tier. That person's number one. So anyway, Peter was rated the third worst, 62 votes. I understand it. Peter was a dick. Season 5, he came into the school. Emma wanted to be near Peter. Peter wanted to be with Manny for some fucked up reason, even though Manny was trying to force Peter to be with Emma. Peter got Manny drunk and filmed her with showing her breasts. I want to be famous. And, when Manny wouldn't pay him $3,000 for stuff, then he put the video to the school. And Manny gets embarrassed and all that. Peter manages to win out, but then Peter gets in trouble from Hatzalakos. But Hatzalakos treats Peter like her son. And to Emma and Manny's shock, that is her son. Hatzalakos' son is Peter? Yep, right so. Peter Stone, damn it. So Peter got into deep trouble, but he didn't get expelled. Why? I don't know. I guess it was the motherly love of one Daphne Hatzalakos. But Peter seemed to be terrible. He entered a relationship with Emma when he should not have been. Peter and Emma, came from bad homes because, Peter's mom, a.k.a. Hatzalakos, innocently kissed Emma's stepfather, that being Snake. The families were grown apart and all that. Emma stayed with Peter. Peter does admit that he thinks that Emma has an eating disorder and wants to help. But Emma blows Peter off in a sense. Peter and Emma are still a couple season 6 when Sean walks in the picture. Peter wants Emma to give him a straight answer who she'd rather be with, Sean or Peter. She doesn't give him a straight answer, so Peter figures he needs to get Sean out of the picture. So he frames Sean for drugs in the locker, which Emma believes. And then Sean decides to fight Peter in a street race. The winner gets rights to Emma. They get involved. Sean, in fact, hits a pedestrian. And all that. Peter is told to stay at the scene by Jay. Oh, yeah, I forgot to say that Jay was the cause of this whole Sean-Peter drag race. Idiot. He told Sean, hit the bricks because, Peter's a minor. They'll go easy on him. But anyway, yeah, Peter gets in trouble. He gets a lot of community service. He talks about road racing and all that. But he's got Emma. And Emma is drawn towards him. He got Emma. Unfortunately, through Jay and Manny, Emma realizes that Peter was terrible, especially with the fact that Peter put a mask in her locker without even knowing Emma's combination. Then the pieces put together. Peter used his mom's list of locker combinations to put the drugs in Sean's locker to get rid of Sean and do it for the relationship. Emma blows him off. Peter gets in trouble with Hatzalakos for breaking his house arrest. But I think Peter may have got out of it by telling him about the fact that Emma had something to do with the dance and all that. Why Emma would do such a thing like that, I don't know. So anyway, Peter then is drawn towards Darcy in the friendship club. I think Peter wanted to get back to be a good guy and try to get Emma back in a sense. But of course, he manages to get Darcy in trouble with this Adams guy who's a creepy stalker of Darcy's pictures online. And, Peter and Darcy break up. Fair enough. Peter asked for it. But then Peter manages to get Darcy back. I think Peter got to Darcy's head by saying that he comes from a broken home. He needs Darcy's help and the friendship club's help. And it didn't really seem like a good relationship because Darcy's parents didn't like Peter, and I think Hatzalakos didn't like Darcy. So anyway, Peter and Darcy go to a ski weekend with Manny, and Darcy gets raped and roofied. Peter does help Darcy deal with her problems by signing himself for Brad Camp when Darcy was at Brad Camp. Thankfully, though, Peter and Darcy were a good relationship. Sadly, though, Darcy decides to go to Kenya to atone for her mistakes. I still think that her parents were behind this. It just doesn't make sense. Why would this happen? I think it would definitely have been the parents' thing. Even though Sinead Grimes went to 90210, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, Peter was upset. He lost his girlfriends. And then he goes with Mia and tries to fit into Mia's modeling thing. Peter can understand about Mia having a teenage daughter because Peter has a half-sister who's young too. So, yeah, Peter gravitated towards Isabella and Mia. But, of course, Peter gets in trouble for having a drug habit, trying to get into Mia's inner circle. Hatzalakos comes back from Regina to deal with Peter's drug issues. Peter cleans himself up, and he's okay in a sense. But I still can't forgive how he ruined girls' lives, especially Emma's. But number 2 on the list, and this guy lost by a shorter margin than I thought. It was actually tight to the butt end. First place had 112, and second place had 108. That's how close it was. I literally thought it was going to be a one-man horse race, but I figured it was a group of death. That person who was number 2 was the worst person in the Claire era, the B era. That'd be Luke. Luke Baker. Luke Baker was introduced in season 12 as a hockey player who was part of the Toronto Icehounds. They got into Degrassi. He and his sister Becky came from Florida with their mom and their minister dad so that Luke can play hockey. Luke flaunted the rules about things and didn't really get in trouble much. He was an idiot. And he, alongside his friend, raped Zoe. And the worst part about it is that Luke begged Becky to help him beat the case. It didn't help that Becky's parents also were pressuring Becky to protect Luke. Luke said to Becky, "I helped you. You lost our grandmother's ring down a sink. I took pity and I vouched for you." However, Becky said, "I came forward the next day with my guilt and said, no, I did it." And Luke says, "Hey, she didn't consent and all that. It didn't matter." And Becky knew she had to tell the truth, at the risk of her parents hating her. I think her parents could have thrown her out, but they basically would have been in the media for all the wrong reasons, and there would be trouble. But yeah, Becky was shunned and all that. Luke was put in jail for a couple years, and Luke tried to get Becky to forgive him, but Becky said, "No, you ruined my life. My parents won't talk to me. I'm an outcast thanks to you, bastard." So Luke was terrible. A rapist. But who would beat a rapist in a list? Because, the number 1 worst parent was a rapist over someone who beat his kids. So, what can you do? So, number 1, the worst person in the Degrassi universe was not a rapist. He was a school shooter. Obviously, you can probably guess who that was, and that's Rick Murray. I'm actually shocked Rick didn't win by as big a margin as I anticipated. I mean, coming from the guy who's done, 3 dozen videos about this whole Rick Murray situation, who basically hates Rick because he retaliated with a gun. All he had to do was not retaliate. Empathy would have been all his. He fucking screwed it up. End of story. I mean, Rick was terrible. I mean, he put Terry in a coma. He was upset with Paige for trying to control Terry. And that's warranted. I mean, I understand that his hate of Paige was all that. They said Rick's behavior probably was because of his dad. No, I think it was because Paige was a thorn inside of him in seasons 3 and 4. He hated Paige. Why else would he have gone after Paige with the gun? First and foremost, when he brought the gun to the school. Because Paige had the anti-Rick rhetoric and everyone was buying into it. In his fantasy mind, he needed to get rid of the queen bee. And obviously, he figured that Paige was pressuring Emma to not give Rick any ear, if you will. But Paige didn't see the gun and all that. And Paige probably thought that Rick was going to go after her in the aftermath and was worried about it. I mean, yeah, Rick did all that. But the stupidest thing Rick did was believe Jay and Spinner's bullshit. Honestly. I just wish Spitter was there. But Spitter would have been disqualified from the worst list because he made the top 5 in the good list. So I guess I have to disqualify him. But yeah, Jay and Spinner got Rick to believe their bullshit twice. First of all, in the bathroom, when, they set up the painted feathers and they get Rick to do the tiebreaker, unknowingly that he was going to get painted feathered. And then they pinned everything on Jimmy because, they needed to get the scent off Radish because Radish was going to get on Spinner's nerves. So, of course, Rick decides to shoot Jimmy. Now, remember, Rick did not directly go after Jimmy with the gun. He turned his head and shot at Jimmy and got him in the spine. If Rick really wanted to kill Jimmy, he would have done a headshot. Bam, game over. Rick went after Emma for spurning him. Sean shoots him with his own gun. Rick dies. Rick's parents probably feel blissfully ignorant, but Rick was a total jackass. He changed Degrassi for the worse. So many people had many different aftermaths, especially Raditch being canned because of his mishandling Rick. And, Zombie Emma. Rick is the worst. No doubt. I would think so, and you said so too. So goodbye for now.